Oh.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I hereby call this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening, given the lateness of the hour. There are 2 items on the general agenda. There's 1 item we'll discuss a resolution adopting the Northern Piedmont Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. That's a big phrase. There's another item, G2, which is a consideration of items related to the acceptance of a 2015 Governor's Highway Safety Program grant. Items on the consent agenda are unanimously approved unless a council member wishes to be pulled for consideration. Members of the committee, I'd just like to have item C3 pulled just for brief informational. Are there any other items that we should consider this evening?
Councilman C2 just for the same reason.
C2. Left on the agenda is item C1. I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion to approve and properly second. All in favor, please show by saying aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Item C2, please.
Resolution approving a revision to the traffic calming policy to clarify the support required to petition for traffic calming.
Councilmember McIntosh is recognized.
I just want to make a comment on this. I think it's a good idea that we remove the stipulation that a neighborhood association has to weigh in on it, because frankly, there's several of these that I've dealt with have not had a neighborhood association. So I think it's just an impediment for people getting involved. Otherwise, I think it's well done.
Agreed.
Move for approval.
Motion. Second. Properly second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is approved unanimously. Item C3, please.
Resolution authorizing the award of his or her fire helmet to a retiring firefighter or to the surviving relative of a deceased firefighter.
Giving us just a brief informational is Assistant Chief Stowe. Assistant Chief Stowe, you recognize.
I'd like to say good evening to all members of council.
Good evening.
Just a brief on the fire helmet. Previously, at this time, a retiring firefighter, they receive what we call a Class A uniform, which includes a badge, pants, shirt, all the insignia. Previously, we had a retiring firefighter that went to Chief Mayo to ask if they could purchase their helmet. Well, to Chief Mayo's surprise, that we did not give the helmet to the firefighters upon their retirement. Just to let you know that this helmet we do not incur any other costs to the department. It is a helmet that has already been issued to that particular individual. Also, to let you know that most times that helmet has reached its 10-year retirement age, but the most important thing, as I said, we do not incur any other costs. In previous times, that helmet of a retired firefighter, it was sent to Engine Company 18, which is where we maintenance our fire helmets, and that helmet was just simply used for parts. It was not reissued to another firefighter.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Stowe. I just want to state that, as was stated, most of the helmets have reached their lifespan. I think it is perfectly acceptable, members of the committee, that we honor living firefighters who have retired for their service, and also that we honor deceased firefighters by providing their loved ones with the helmets as well at a nominal fee, which of course is mandated by this particular statute. Councilman Burks recognized.
I was going to move for approval. I think that's a very, very fine gesture.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion properly second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is once again unanimous. Thank you, Assistant Chief Stowe.
Thank you.
Item G1, please.
Resolution adopting the Northern Piedmont Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. This item was continued from the July meeting of the Public Safety Committee.
Given this presentation is our Emergency Management Director, Mr. Mill Sadler. Mr. Sadler, I have this extremely large mitigation plan in front of me that we did kind of take the liberty of perusing over a little bit before the meeting. So you have the floor. I'm sure everyone else is very interested in what we have here.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I will make a brief presentation briefly. As you can see, this plan does have 1,516 pages. That's not that was the draft, I should say. It's not complete yet until we have items of adoption. So we've got to add about at least 40 more pages, right? And then we'll be distributed them. Okay, we do have a regional hazard mitigation plan that we want to present to you. We do currently have a multi-jurisdiction plan that is current for Forsyth County. That's for Forsyth County only and the 8 municipalities within the county and the county itself. That plan will expire in September, which of course we've got to have a new plan, and I'll explain why we have to have a new one in just a moment. However, we have gone from the local multi-jurisdiction plan within Forsyth County to a regional plan. This plan now will incorporate 7 counties and 37 jurisdictions, and we'll talk in just a moment about why we have gone to that means of doing it. This presentation is going to be in just 5 simple questions, and we're going to make it quick, and we'll pass right through them. What is mitigation? What is a hazard mitigation plan? What information is in the plan? And why do governments need this plan? And which jurisdictions are participating? Again, this is a regional plan, and there will be a change in that government representation. First, what is mitigation? Mitigation is simply what we do at local, state, and federal levels in order to eliminate a hazard or to reduce the impact of a hazard. Citizens who buy flood insurance are reducing the impact of a flood. That's a mitigation method. Adding a generator to a building, an auxiliary generator to a building to be used in a time of loss of power, that's a mitigation action. You're reducing the impact of that particular hazard. And we want to make sure that we ultimately decrease current and future vulnerabilities of our communities to all natural hazards. The net hazard mitigation plan does deal, almost exclusively with natural hazards, but there are a few others that we're going to talk about briefly. What is the hazard mitigation plan? Well, we write down what we're going to do, simply. It's a multi-jurisdiction plan that addresses issues and concerns unique to this region of vulnerability to hazard and risk. Also, we want to incorporate the goals that we have for our hazard mitigation program. What are we trying to achieve, or what are we trying to incorporate into our normal daily activities and in order to reach our objectives? Well, let's go the other way. Third question. What information is in the plan? Very simply, it identifies natural hazards that could affect jurisdictions, includes overall summaries of each hazard and their impact on our vulnerable structures and critical facilities and infrastructure, which of course is most critical. And it's a description of mitigation goals, as I mentioned a minute ago. We will look at those goals briefly, and those are to reduce the long-term vulnerabilities. The hazards that were looked at by the planners were very simple. They looked at 5 likely hazards and 4 highly likely hazards. I don't think it's necessary to go through each one individually, but I will, of course, point out the fact that the highly likely hazards are hailstorm, lightning, thunderstorm, winter storm. And, of course, the other likely hazards are things that are which we're a little less vulnerable to, but, of course, they are likely to happen. And, of course, we've got a chart here that shows the impact on the county and, of course, the spatial extent. In other words, what critical facilities or infrastructure do we anticipate being damaged, and how much real estate overall for the county. Going further, the planners looked at 4 other possible hazards: earthquake, landslide, dam failure, and erosion. These things are certainly possible. They're less likely than the other 9 items that we just looked at, but of course we have to look at the impact of those and how they are likely to affect our county. Now, as a third category is other hazards. Most of these are man-made hazards. This is what I meant rather when we talk about it's not exactly natural hazards only. We've got 4 man-made, and 1 of them is kind of in between there. Highly likely to occur in Forsyth County, of course, are hazardous materials incidents and wildfires. This being an urban county, we don't have a lot of risk for wildfire because there's not a lot of woods and unincorporated or undeveloped areas that can burn. But of course, when they do burn, there will be some substantial impact to us. And of course, fracking is a possibility now. Nuclear accidents. This would generally occur if there were a problem at the McGuire nuclear plant. We are within 50 miles of the ingestion pathway for that plant, and there are some possible consequences if there were a major accident at McGuire. And of course, the terrorism threat is always available to one and all. Consider Chattanooga, Tennessee. Nobody would have certainly thought that it would be a hazard there, so we just don't know. So we've got to include that. Okay, 4th question. Why do governments need this plan? Very simply, because of the 5-letter word, MONEY. The Disaster Mitigation Act of October 2000 establishes a federal requirement that local governments adopt a hazard mitigation plan in order to be eligible for hazard mitigation funding. Very simply, no plan, no funding. So I think that speaks for itself. And of course, at the state level, the North Carolina Senate Bill 300 requires all local governments to have an approved hazard mitigation plan. in order to receive state public assistance funds for state-declared disasters. Recognized very quickly, and I want to be sure and include this, make sure everyone understands it, the federal government and the state government have decided that spending on funds in a mitigation operation is much more efficient than in a response operation. So what they want to do is to shift those dollars from response to mitigation as much as possible. And then they want to do it on a regional basis as opposed to an individual county basis. For instance, the state only has to look at about 20 plans instead of 100 plans. So you see the efficiencies that are being developed here as we go along. Last question. Which jurisdictions are participating in this plan? The city of Winston-Salem, the 7 counties around it, well, closest to us, and that would include 30 municipal jurisdictions. So we're looking at a total of 37 total jurisdictions that we're going to have to do, as we're about to ask you to do here, is to move to adopt the plan. Once that's done, the drafts have been approved by the federal government and the state government. Then the final draft will be approved, which includes the resolutions of adoption from each of those 37 municipalities. I mentioned a minute ago that the goals of the plan are included. If you wish, you can look at Annex C of the plan that our chairman has so graciously printed. And you'll see that on Annex C talks specifically about Forsyth County. There's a lot of historical information as well as the goals and objectives that we want to set for, we would like to set for Forsyth County. So those are the things that we're trying to achieve, and this is where we're going. I'll pause just a moment in case there are any questions about the goals.
Any questions for Mr. Sadler about the goals? Mr. Sadler?
Okay, one more slide, and I'm done. Okay, we didn't print the plan out and bring one down here. We sure appreciate the chair's interest in it. If you are interested, looking again, I said it's 1,516 pages. This is the link by which you may find the plan, and in all of the draft of the plan currently. Or if you wish, just go to readyforsight.org, and you'll see right in the middle of the page available for review at the Northern Piedmont Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan appears there. We want to ask for your recommendation to the full council for adoption so that we can move forward and have our regional plan as opposed to our current multi-jurisdiction plan. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Sadler. Members of the committee, we do have one gentleman who has signed up to speak. Do we have any direct questions for Mr. Sadler about the hazard mitigation plan? Councilmember Burke.
Statement. I always appreciate the work that Mr. Sellers puts into this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler. We don't have any questions at this time, but if you would just stay close. We have one gentleman signed up to speak, Mr. Dan Dwight.
That's under G2.
Forgive me. Any other questions for Mr. Sadler as we move to conclude? Members of the committee, we've been asked to adopt the Northern Piedmont Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan and also to agree to take such other official action as may be reasonably necessary to carry out the proposed actions of the plan. Motion and properly second. All in favor of approving this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, sir.
Item G2, please.
Consideration of items related to the acceptance of the 2015 Governor's Highway Safety Program grant.
All right, giving this particular presentation is our Police Chief, Barry Roundtree. Chief, you are recognized.
Good evening, Chairman Taylor, members of the Public Safety Committee.
Good evening.
We've been given the opportunity from the Governor's Highway Safety Program to receive 25% grant funding for our DWI task force. Just by way of history, the DWI task force was formed in 2010, and we were given funding for 4 years at 100% funding from the Governor's Highway Safety Program. At the conclusion of the fourth year, beginning of the fifth year, the city was responsible for 100% funding of the positions. But due to the success of our DWI task force, the Governor's Highway Safety Program did provide 25% funding, even though we were responsible for 100% funding. And again, what we're being offered again is 25% funding for the end of the fifth year to continue our DWI task force. We do have the top DWI task force in the state, and the DWI task force does encompass 3 officers and 1 supervisor from the Winston-Salem Police Department, 1 deputy from the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, and 1 officer from Kernersville Police Department. And I do have Sergeant McDonald here tonight if you have any questions about the stats and the rest and the accomplishments of the DWI task force.
Well, I think, Chief, I think we would all be interested. That's one of the notes that I have here, to hear some of the successes. I don't know if we need to hear it at this time, but if you want to give us a brief synopsis, and I've got one other question. We've got one person from the county, one person from the city, one person from Kernersville, but we're up to 100% of the cost.
We were
75%.
right. We were responsible for 100% of the funding at the conclusion of the fourth year, but because of the success of our DWI task force, the Governor's Highway Safety Program offered us some additional money. So they offered us funding for 25%. So the city was responsible for 75%, opposed to 100% funding. And we do have 4 employees. We have 3 officers and Sergeant McDonald.
I was just saying, maybe the county and Kernersville ought to come to the table for some
We're-
consideration.
They're part of the share also.
Okay, so it's a share cost.
It is.
Mr. Manager?
They're part of the share.
Councilmember Light.
No, that's the exact question I was going to ask. So that's, I'd like to hear from the sergeant about.
And may I ask a question for
Councilmember Burt.
part of the share? He can tell me another time. I'll need to have a better understanding when you say part of the share. You can tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sergeant McDonald, we're all curious to hear some of the good things that the DWI task force has done. So you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I printed off some of the stats that we had from last year alone. As part of the supervisor through the Governor's Highway Safety Program, we're required to keep all of our statistical information. We, as part of the grant, respond with that and enter that into their yearly totals that they get. The 25% funding that they're doing pretty much, in most part, is they're still getting all of our statistical information because the Forsyth County DWI Task Force has been so successful at what we've done. In the year 2014, the DWI Task Force, and they said this is 6 including myself, had a total of 678 DWI arrests, 125 open container. We're also part of the GHSP funding. We're required to do 2 seatbelt checks a month, and we have to do 1 license check per quarter, which is every 3 months. Out of those, we had 125 seatbelt violations, 362 speeding violations, 270 driving while license revoked violations. Uninsured drivers were 26, 25 reckless driving. We had 757 other traffic-related offenses. We had 99 misdemeanor drug offenses, 19 felony, and we seized a total of 44 vehicles valued at $269,500. We seized 10 guns, almost 800 grams of marijuana, 150 grams of cocaine, $5,100 in other drugs, which mostly in our line is the prescription pills. And we seized a total of $335 in cash just in the year of 2014. We currently, as the task force, as the chief mentioned, we run the entire county. We are the only agency or the only group within the department that is multi-jurisdictional. So we do run the entire area of Forsyth County and our duties and responsibilities to the citizens. And that is the 2014. If you have any other questions about any previous years, I know that we were put in for a national recognition this year. We did not get it. However, we were the first in the state of North Carolina to have this particular grant funding, and I believe there's about 10 or 11 now that have followed suit, and we have been the model for those other agencies to follow. We have a DWI symposium coming up the 17th through the 20th where all of those groups will get together and discuss all the pros and cons of what they do in each of their jurisdictions, so we can bring those things back and those ideas, and hopefully better, as I said, better put them out on the street, protect the citizens and the community, the impaired drivers. As I said, it's a never-ending business with us, unfortunately, and we do want to get them off the street.
Sergeant McDonald, after listening to those statistics, I would say that you and the crew have been extremely successful.
Yeah.
And if anybody should have been nationally recognized, I think it should have been us. I'd like to see who won if we didn't. Councilman Burke.
I was also going to say, with all of those, what you've done, evidently it was not a lot of combative people. Like if you stopped me, evidently you had more peaceful people you stopped than negative people.
I would say, in the gamut of impaired drivers or impaired people, you have the happy people who are intoxicated, and you have the rude ones. We run the gamut. We really do. But we do deal with more of the compliant ones than we do the really bad ones. And I'm happy to say, because that just makes our night a lot longer as well.
Yes, I was going to also say, if people would, when even they're sober enough, hopefully the drunks would know how to take the punishment and go on about their business. And I have said, anytime an officer stops, I think we will have more peaceful relationships if you do not like what's happening, that you go to another level to talk back to the police. I've said to the city manager, I don't think we do enough to market our city off. When it's come to, and Chief Roundtree, with our police department, we haven't heard of some of the kinds of things that you sometimes hear from cities. And that says a lot to our police department. It says that we're working hard, the elected officials with the city manager and the mayor, to get the best we can and to train to the best we know how. And it's also how you carry out your duties. You can carry out a duty that can result in a lot of negative things, or you can carry that duty out in a peaceful way. And so I encourage our citizens to listen and obey the blue suits.
Well, with that said, Councilmember, we also go to and are responsible for teaching what they call an impact program to all of the driver's education schools. Even for Forsyth Driving School, who's privately funded, we also go to their programs. They contact us. We go in. It's an hour-long presentation that we pretty much talk about the consequences of driving while impaired, speeding, speed competition, some of the things that we would think that the younger generation would probably more encounter. With all the things that have gone on in the country, we also added in a new segment this year since I've been over is what to do if the police do stop you. You know, something that we can educate the new drivers coming out, what we're looking for, what we expect of you, and what the best thing to do when we walk up and everything, obviously it goes the way we want it to. The chief clearly demands the utmost respect for us, for our person that we're representing out there, and him, and we're trying to put that out there so we can educate as many as we can through that program. And just as of last year, we taught 70 classes with a total of 2,299 students.
Councilmember Light.
Thank you. Impressive statistics.
Thank you.
So the six of you are out there roaming around the city and county alone?
Well, there is six of us.
But
as part of the supervisor, what we try to do is figure out which area of the county we want to focus on any given night. Some areas of the county may have a special event which has alcohol, or it just may have some other social function that we want to be seen. We want to get out there, not so much to get the violations, but also to deter them.
Yeah.
So we may go to Clemens one night, to Kernersville, and we do it as a group. So all six of us will go at one time, and that's just because we have backup close to each of us at that time.
And what about, do you all wear the body cameras?
Everyone but myself, yes, ma'am. And I'm not out there doing it quite as much as they are. Unfortunately, I get a lot of the statistical paperwork, and I'm in front of a computer quite a bit.
Well, that's good, because certainly the chief and some of the officers have told about the stories that come from someone who has been stopped doesn't necessarily, match the truth. So I think it's very, very important that your folks wear the cameras.
When the initial 2010 grant, the DWI Task Force included that in, so we have actually had body-worn cameras since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
We were the only section of the department who had them at that time. Mm-hmm. And they have paid off tremendously, not only for court preparation, and especially when you encounter all of the defenses and arguments that we have in drive while impaired cases, the video doesn't lie.
Yeah, right. Very good.
We've got Mr. Dan Dwight who signed up to speak. We're going to get to you. But before we do that, Councilmember McIntosh.
The numbers are chilling. The numbers are really high. I guess my question is, are we successful because we're doing better policing, or do we just have more drunks driving around?
Well,
better policing.
I would honestly say that the number, and I honestly say that this is the numbers that I'm presenting are just the task force, and that's not what the rest of the department as a whole made in DWI arrest. That number would far exceed, the 4 digits. out of 6 of us, that was just 678 last year. The most problem that we run into was the 44 vehicles seized. And mainly because that is your repeat drunk driver. To seize your vehicle under the current statute, you have to be driving while impaired, while driving while your license is revoked from a DWI already. And that's where we're seizing the 44 last year, just from those repeat drunk drivers. There's also a statute if you don't have a license or insurance and you're driving while impaired, we can seize your vehicle as well. But these are mainly the repeat DWIs offenders. Mm-hmm. And from the previous year, we also had, I believe, 44 seized vehicles valued at over $222,000. So.
I'm happy to hear that you're doing the educational component as well, because to me, success in this will be seeing that number gradually decline, and not because we're making less effort, but because kids like my sons use Uber when they go out. They hopefully are within walking distance of a place they want to go be at. So, we need to keep the level of policing up, but hopefully that number comes down. And that, to me, that would be success through education and continued enforcement.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant McDonald.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, did you have any other points?
I'm just going to add, this unit does a tremendous job. One thing that Sergeant McDonald didn't add is no way to really calculate how many lives they've saved.
Yes.
Just from them being out there and doing their jobs. Also, this unit will use our lab quite a bit. Sometimes their cases are held up because they don't have the lab results. So our in-house lab will speed up their cases also. Also, the grant did pay for equipment, vehicles, and all the associated costs when we originally started the grant in 2010.
It's good to see that our public safety departments, all of them, are moving on all cylinders. It makes me really excited. Mr. Dan Dwight, you've been extremely patient. It looks like we're almost at the end of this particular item. You have the floor briefly, sir.
Dan Dwight, 500 Martha Court, Kernersville, 27284. I just wanted I think your mind's made up, but I just wanted to put in my piece that this needs to be approved, the funds. It's very important. I had the opportunity to ride with Sergeant McDonald about 8 weeks ago on a Friday night, and it was nonstop. These guys have no downtime. That's the scary part, that there's so many impaired drivers out there. And it's just not the alcohol. It's illegal drugs, prescription drugs. If you talk to any of his officers, you'd think you're talking to a pharmacist. That's the knowledge they have. And I just wanted to ask that you do approve this item for the budget.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dwight. As Councilman Burke always says, City Hall belongs to everybody, and we appreciate your input and citizens' input here at this committee. Members of the committee, it looks like that our action is requested for this item. If there is no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
That is once again unanimous. Is there any? Oh, Councilman Burke.
Yes, I wanted to say something, please. This is another subject.
You have the floor.
All right. We had such a wonderful affair here this past week.
Yes.
And there were a lot of things happening in Winston-Salem. But of course, we know the Black Festival was the center of attention. This is what so many people said, how happy they felt because it was such a safe, kind, and that the police were so kind, and they were so pleasant, and they were so positive, upbeat. And of course, we heard these comments, and I said to the city manager, I said the staff from City Hall, all who worked very hard, and the Winston-Salem Police Department, Chief Roundtree, you all did an excellent job. Now, I have not heard any reports. I hope everything went along peaceful.
I think it did.
Yeah.
And it shows, and we heard some of the celebrities talk about how pleasant this city is. We like how the people, and I was with quite a few of them, and they've been coming quite a few years, but it was such a wonderful downtown town, walking, coming and going, and talking about the plays and talking about people who visit our city. And they, in turn, talked about us. Now, one of our celebrities made a statement. I was at a place, and I said, we are so pleased to welcome you to our city. And she said, when she goes places, she's going to say city like I say city. I didn't know I said it any different, but I just love my city. I do. And everybody knows I love my city. And so it was just so pleasant. And then around about 5:30, that was August the 4th, I was at Haynes Mill, and about 60 people came in on a bus, riding the bus. They have been coming, starting off with 15, and now they're up close to 60 people. And they talked about, and they were so pleasant, riding that bus and was just as happy, and then getting ready to go to a play. So our city, and what I've asked the city managers to do, to let us know how much money we've actually made, because some of the people went out to Renola Village to have their meals. They went out by the mall and out Haynes Mill. And it's so important to see how much money we actually made in this city. And it's so important that it was not only the money, but how they felt about in spending their money. And I just want to say thank you. Thanks to all of you who participated. And someone told me when I recognized the city manager and the chief of police, that just set the tone at that gala to know that they were in safe hands, Chief. Thank you.
I'll say, and we'll finalize our comments here and get to move out of here, but I don't believe Councilman Burke there's anybody who loves this city more than I do.
Oh, now listen.
Being a native son
Now,
of the
wait a
city.
minute, we're
But nevertheless, we can argue that point a little bit later. But I can say that I'm glad that the National Black Theater Festival went really well without incident. I think there were a lot of celebrities. There were a lot of good law-abiding citizens who were downtown and all over the city who really enjoyed coming and being a part of the process. But one of the things that I didn't like, I think there was a lot of good money to be spent downtown. I was sad to see that, Honey Pot and Tate's decided to go on vacation when there was a lot of money to be made, when I hadn't seen them go on vacation any other time throughout the year. Nevertheless, without that, I think that downtown partnership and all the downtown groups did a wonderful job of hosting, thanks to the city manager, to the chief, all of our attorneys, the fire department, Chief Mayo and Stowe and everybody else. I think everybody pulled together to make this event wonderful. Public Works, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Public Works, sanitation,
Community development, we better call them all.
the community development, the entire city gambit. But we thank you all for helping this National Black Theater Festival of 2015 to go extremely well. Is there anything else at this time for the good of the order? There's nothing further. We'll consider this meeting to be adjourned.